Bonjour. Thanks everyone for joining us today to this great panel on how to get trained in AI. I believe today it's a highly relevant topic given the rapidly evolving AI landscape and its growing impact on our society. On February 2nd, Article 4 of the European AI Act, focused on AI literacy, came into force. It mandates that providers and deployers of AI systems ensure their workforce is properly trained in AI, considering the technical knowledge, experience, and the context in which AI systems are used. This reflects the increasing importance of AI literacy and responsible AI deployment in Europe. The IMEC Digimeter of 2024 report confirms this urgency. While AI adoption is accelerating in Flanders, understanding remains limited. Only 28% of the survey participants say they know how to use generative AI to work more efficiently, highlighting a clear gap in education and structured training. Today, we will explore key questions around what does AI literacy actually mean, who needs training and what type of training, technical skill, ethical understanding, or business impact. Who should be responsible for providing this training? Companies, governments, or educational institutions? What resources are available today, and how can AI itself enhance training and education? And why is AI training so important? To discuss this point, we have an excellent panel to help us unpack these questions. I don't have them in order, but I'll keep the order on my sheet. Stephan Salberter is the CEO of Campus 19, Belgium innovative coding school known for its peer-to-peer training model. Under its leadership, Campus 19 has become a hub for digital skills development, offering a unique tuition-free training environment that emphasizes problem-solving, collaboration, and adaptability. Stefan is passionate about equipping students with technical but also soft skills needed to thrive in a rapidly evolving AI tech landscape. Thank you, Stefan. Laurent Hublet is the co-founder and managing director of Bicentral, Belgium's leading digital hub located in Brussels Central Station that serves as a home for digital innovation, housing over 60 tech initiatives, startups, and training programs. Laurent is a strong advocate for digital inclusion and entrepreneurship, working closely with public and private stakeholders to accelerate Belgium's position in the global digital economy. His work focuses on fostering an ecosystem where technology and talent can thrive. Karen Booth is the managing director of FARI, the AI Institution for Common Good, based also in Brussels. It focuses on developing AI solutions that are ethical, transparent, and beneficial to society. Karen has extensive experience in technology policy, innovation, and strategic leadership. She plays a key role in guiding FARI's research initiative and ensuring that AI application develops under FARI's guidance adhere to high standards and accountability and fairness. Anyway, Stephan. Stephan is Gruyaert. Is the coordinator of VAIA, the Vlaams AI Academy Flanders, an organization dedicating to advancing AI knowledge and skills in Flanders with a background in education and technology. Stephan has been instrumental in shaping AI training programs that target both technical and non-technical audiences. His mission is to make AI training accessible and to bridge the gap between AI innovation and workforce readiness in Belgium. And last but not least, Nicolas van Zeebroek is a professor at the ULB, who just presented his book, specializing in digital strategy, technological innovation, and the economic impact of AI. His research focuses on how business can leverage AI to challenge and to drive competitiveness and value creation. Nicolas published extensively on the challenge and opportunities of digital transformation, and he regularly advised both public and private sector organizations on AI adoption and strategic implementation. But let's get started with the debate on this third day of the AI week. So our first question is, it's good to talk about training and literacy, but the AI literacy article of the AI Act, Karen, can you tell us more about which company, organization, and what AI skill, in your opinion, should be tackled to make the workforce compliant?
Well, that is a very broad question, actually.
Sorry.
Thank you. But basically, the AI Act assumes that every single professional, because I think we have to be realistic about the fact that AI is impacting every single area of our professional and our private lives, whether we like it or not. And so the AI Act actually implies now that every single professional, at least, should have a basic understanding of what artificial intelligence is and what it's not, and the fact that it can be slightly misleading because we assume a lot about AI that is actually not grounded in fact. And we think it can do a lot of things it cannot do, where on the other side, we don't see a lot of opportunities it can bring. So it really begins at having a very basic understanding of the technology and the methodology behind this concept of artificial intelligence, which can start with just like a 1 hour introduction that every single Belgian professional should take if they're not acquainted already.
Any reaction?
Yeah, maybe I can add something. Very simplified and simple comparison with electricity. We'll talk about as AI as a system technology, and electricity is a system technology, a general purpose technology. I think most of us, all of us, know that we don't take shower with a hairdryer. That's easy. That's something we know, and I think most of us are, let's say, literate about electricity. And I think we should aim for that as well for AI technology. AI as a technology, we don't need to be all engineers, we don't need to be all electricians, but we should be aware of the fact that there's an entire ecosystem of experts about the technology. There's something about infrastructure. There's, we all know that if we run our lives, if we run our companies, our machinery, that's an investment that costs money. It has an implication, or it has an implication on infrastructure and climate and so on. That's something we need to know, but we don't need to be all specialists. Let's say more generalists. We all know that. I think that's easy for electricity, and I think we should aim for that as well for AI as a general purpose technology.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would take another then, which I fully agree. It's like the cars. You need to know the traffic laws. You need to have a driving license. You don't need to be able to be an engineer and to build a car or to think about the mobility of the future. There are people there for that. So I think it's the case. And there were many people dying when electricity arrived on Earth and in the cities as well. So yeah, do you need a kind of driver license for AI? At least you need to be very careful who is the sender of the training or the information, because there are many vendors who need you to grow their customer base. So that's one element you need to, I think, to take into account.
Yeah, maybe that's another new question. Maybe the validation of AI literacy. I think that's a big question at this moment. I think we all get those questions for how can we validate my knowledge about AI literacy. So for me as a professional, for me as a for my company, for my employees, so we can say follow these trainings, follow these courses, workshops, and so on. But how can we validate those trainings and those knowledge and skills? How can we say? When can we say that we are AI literate? That's a big question at this moment, I guess.
If anybody has the answer, I'm interested. Yeah, Laurent has the answer.
I think it's probably an attitude which is curiosity, because ultimately it's still a technology that is changing very fast. I think somehow many of us, we feel left behind because it's moving so fast. So I think it's a certain attitude of being curious and being critical at the same time, of understanding where is it really helpful. And I remember like 25 years ago when we discovered the search with Google, I think we were also like, whoa, there seems to be so much. And then, you kind of learn individually, but I think also collectively, this is a journey which has started only 2-3 years ago. And so I think we're all quite new in the field.
Absolutely. But beyond the need for compliance, giving the big transformating power of AI, understanding its capabilities can give European and Belgian companies really a strategic advantage, or at least forbid them from having a strategic disadvantage if they don't use it. What resources can today decision makers in C-levels have to prepare themselves for the change that AI is going to bring to all sectors in the coming, let's say, 2 years? I used to say 5, but no, I think more 2. That's Stephan?
Yeah, maybe. I think there's, in the first place, there's lots of educational resources, educational materials at this moment. If I look on a regional level in the first place, so for Flanders, for example, so we are a Flemish organization, there's lots of educational materials on our website. So as FAIA, as the Flanders AI Academy, we offer a lot of training. I think at this moment we offer more than 1,300 trainings, courses, and learning materials about AI. So that's a very important one. And also, I think professionals and companies and organizations and governments should also be aware of the fact that training, education is not always the formal way of training. It's also being curious. It's also the non-formal and the informal ways of learning that should be engaged and facilitated. That's something that we try to do with FAIA on a regional level, the Flemish part of the country. But of course, there's lots of research resources at this moment in Flanders as well. There's the Flanders AI research program. There's lots of federations and supportive stakeholders like FLAIO, Agoria, Uniso Voca, and so on, that facilitates and offer trainings as well in Flanders, also in Belgium, of course. So I really think that's important. KDM, for example, so the Knowledge Center Data and Society, is a very important stakeholder in order to researches about ethical questions and legal compliance questions and so on. But I think Karen and the other partners here can complement the offer and the resources on that.
Yeah, definitely. It's partially about the offer, but it's also about where is the market demand. And if we see organizations that are approaching us are usually have some concerns, not just about technology and the opportunities it offers, but also about potential ethical, legal, sustainability constraints. And we see questions coming in at 3 different levels. First of all, they want to know what's hitting them. So first of all, there's this same need for literacy to understand, but typically also in a relatively applied way. Like how could this be relevant to my business? They want to not just gain literacy, but also be inspired indeed into what opportunities, does it bring, what challenges does it bring, applied to my context. Then the second layer is typically, what does that mean for my team? How can I organize my team and my teams to be more efficient, to be more effective, to spend more time on value-adding activities rather than repetitive tasks? And so that's more about applying existing tools to be more human-centric as an organization. But then you get to the third layer, and that's the really interesting one, is like, how could AI potentially disrupt my business in a good or in a bad way? And how do we prepare for that? And then there's a lot of questions still unanswered today, I think, for many industries. And that is definitely a big part of the collective learning that we're going through to understand, like, how is AI going to disrupt many, many different businesses, and how do we prepare for that?
I think we have many also solutions. Most of the employees in the private sector in Belgium are under the CCT 200. I think it's 800,000 people. And there is an independent training organization there called Sephora. And they are very involved also in training the people there. But as Nicolas mentioned before, we have mainly SME in Belgium. So the challenge, of course, in SME is time and resource. And how? So I think the offer is there. Is how do you organize the demand to make sure that this demand will have really the right tools and solution, and don't be afraid of taking it. It makes me think to when we all know it's the fourth industrial revolution, when the sewing machine arrived in the textile industry. You had the Singer brand, and it went everywhere. In Lyon, workers, there were 200 people died in protest against the sewing machine. So you see that it has a huge impact on the real lives of people. So we are not there, of course. But indeed, we tend often to overestimate the impact of technology, but underestimate the impact of culture. And we all know that in change, culture eats strategy at breakfast. And I think the last point you mentioned is the impact should maybe be nearly the first point to address, to make sure that people are not afraid to get trained and to not to lose their job, and show that they will become an enriched person by using it.
Nicolas?
Yeah, I agree with all what you've said. The one thing I would add is there is, I think, a risk with the AI to believe that your literacy or your expertise is going to come from formal education. Whereas I think there's only as much as formal education, whatever its format, can bring. At the end of the day, it is about using it. And I think the number one advice to give, especially to leaders or to people who are really in a management position, that the single best piece of advice, I think, is start using it, play with it. And that's the only way, because at the end of the day, the use cases are to be invented. As you said, it's a fully generic technology. It's a general purpose thing. We just don't know what's going to be the killer use case for your business. So if they expect even Fari, with all of the brilliant minds that we have at Fari, I know, or others to just tell them how it's going to affect their business, they will still be stuck in 10 years. It's only by really starting playing with it that you start figuring out what it really means. And also, that's also how you start recognizing what are the limits of the tool, where you can trust it and all. The question is, do you have the mental tools to also understand when you are hitting a limit? And that, I think, is where not just formal education, but fundamental education is going to be far more important here than in earlier waves of technology, is that we will need tools to be able to just recognize when we are hitting a limit, because AI will not tell us and will not teach us to tell the difference. Yeah.
We have at my company, we have a very big view that those large language models, there's so much we don't understand about them. It's a bit like a green field of magic that we can harvest, and that's a bit where we are today. There's as much as to discover what we can do with them than really understanding a technology that we've made. It's not in the question I prepared, but as you're talking, some questions come up. There's a lot of analogy with other industrial revolutions. I think the very big difference, and it's been coming, is that it's way faster. And so maybe people had more time before to adapt in a bit more organic way to the new technology coming, whilst now it's hitting us very fast. So for me, that's also part of AI literacy. How do we keep people and workers with us in this fast evolving technical revolution?
Before really answering your question, because I don't have a magic bullet to that one, I think one thing to keep in mind is that the speed of the technology, we assume that it's an exogenous thing. Technology is being brought to us, and technology is evolving super fast. I think that's a fact. I'm not contesting that. And indeed, the exponential speed at which the technology evolves is completely unmatched in the earlier industrial revolutions. No question. Nonetheless, there are two sides to this equation. Technology can only hit us to the extent that we start using it. And so to the extent that you have social inertia on the user side, that you have organizational inertia within companies, within sectors, within industries who are not able to reap those advantages or those functionalities as yet, then actually the speed of the technology is pointless. What matters is the speed of the technology multiplied by the speed of its penetration within actual use. And so it's not just that we are going to be faced with a wave that will completely disrupt us. It will disrupt us only if we start really using it. And so I think we have to keep these things in sync, but we shouldn't be forced into pushed in a corner where it's like the tempo of the technology that dictates the speed at which we are supposed to digest the technology. And I think it would be a lost game anyways, because at the end of the day, society, organizations, citizens, they have their own inertia, you know, and even electricity and the like. I mean, these earlier revolutions, how much time did the industry really take to adjust to those potentialities? From the moment we had massive energy available and the first machines and equipment that we could tap into, how much time did it take to really rethink and redesign our economic models and our industries? The answer is decades. It's not a matter of years. It was decades from the moment the technology was there. I know the technology evolves even faster, but I don't see any compelling reason why we would be more able to adapt to this faster than we've been, knowing that we have 40 years of already digital evolution that we have still not dealt with. And that's the thing that always makes me a little bit skeptical when I hear about those big claims about technology adoption and productivity and unemployment being displaced and blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, come on, most of the companies that I'm encountering or interacting with, they're still facing or struggling with their 30 years old, 40 years old systems that are still there, written in COBOL or running on old mainframes. I mean, that's still the reality of many firms, especially the bigger ones. And so, yeah, okay, we can dream of what AI is going to do, but we have such a huge technological depth that is only increasing, that I think it's going to be slower than we imagine. And so that's not to say that we shouldn't worry about it. I think it's about time to really start getting skilled and up to speed. But it's just to say we can decide, we can choose the tempo of these things, provided we do it by choosing exactly what we want to do with the technology.
Karen and then Stephan.
And we have
Karen was first.
I'll be quick about it, but I agree with your point. But if you look, for example, at the penetration of smartphones today, that went incredibly fast. So I think there are examples where the adoption and the penetration is going probably faster than anybody would have expected. It just will depend on whether either there is a pain that is hurtful enough or an opportunity that is big enough, or because somewhere in the middle will not do.
Yeah, but just fully agree with that, except that it's not because we are using ChatGPT, like 400 million users are using it weekly already, or that we have billions of smartphones, that you're making the right use of those technologies. We can make very gadgetic use of those technologies, and I think that's pretty much the case at the moment. With only scratching the surface of what these tools can do.
Yeah, and we have much more time and talents to use it as well, because if you look at the previous industrial revolution, yeah, people were living until the age of 50, 60. Now it's the one of two girls being born today will live until 100 years. We work much more time, so we have much more time and resources. Look at the demography, the number of people in Europe, for instance, and in the world. And that's a huge potential for a better adoption. But I tend to agree that it will take probably much more time than we think. And of course, this pressure comes from the big players who are investing a lot and want us, of course, to use their products. There is the big announcement this morning, of course. But this is really to make sure that their investment will pay off. We should not be too naive about that neither.
No, I agree. And going in that sense, it's been very fast indeed. And it's difficult to see the long-term consequences, because we've seen technologies where there was a lot of money invested, like metaverse, and where the impact was not there. And we all remember people saying the internet is not there to stay, and it looks a bit ridiculous today. So that's why it's not easy to project in the long run, because it has come so fast. What I think is striking for me is that it's a technology that we have to learn, but we are learning beings. That's also what makes the human being different from a lot of species, is that we continue our development very late, and our brain keeps on learning a lot. And we see that this is a technology where, and some of it is called machine learning, we are passing a lot of information to the technology and not necessarily to human beings. If you look at a lot of professions, accounting, lawyers, and so on, this is a model where for centuries, more senior people have been training junior people. Now we can automate all of this. But how are we going to have the next experts? You see, how will the human learning, how is it going to evolve? And that's a bit what we've seen with aviation. Aviation went through automation 30, 40 years ago. And then there was a phase where there was a lot of reliance on automation. And so there were a number of accidents because pilots were trusting blindly the technology. Mm-hmm. Which is why after a phase of learning a lot of the automation, the industry went back to teaching flying manual. And I think this is probably what we're going to have in a lot of industries as well, is that you will have to use AI, but you will still have to be able to fly manual as an accountant, as a lawyer, as a doctor. And that's why I think it would be fascinating how all these learning processes will evolve in the next years.
Very interesting. I wrote critical thinking. I think it's also a bit around that, right? What can we give to the machine, and what should stay knowledge that are in people's head? I think it's an important.
Maybe if I can end the line then with to illustrate the challenge of this topic. I think it was a study of the World Economic Forum and about the half-life of a skill, of a digital skill, and that's about 5 years. That means when I have a skill today, in 5 years, half of my skills will be obsolete. In 5 years, we don't have numbers at this moment about AI skills, but I'm pretty sure that the half-life of a skill will be maybe 2 or 3 years. So I think lifelong learning is essential in this case, in this matter.
Thank you. It was my next
Oh,
point.
sorry.
Upskilling and reskilling, because we are learning individuals, so learning beasts, if we can call them. But of course, this fast evolving technology means that we have constantly to learn the new evolution of the new technology in AI. And so it's important for companies, and that's also what the AI Act say, it's not only about learning it once in time, it's also to keep this knowledge and to keep it evolving with the evolving technology. So companies are going to have to put in place serious training and upskilling ways of programs in the companies. I think how are they going to do that? Are they ready? Maybe Nicolas will advise a lot of companies. Are they ready to do that?
No, I don't think so. But I think society at large is not prepared for that. But it has been 20 years since we, or even more, that we say lifelong learning is the issue of the century. But not in the sense that we've been used to it, because lifelong learning is something that has grown up from business schools and focusing on increasing at the margin the skills of the top performing people already in companies. That is not what we need. What we need is massive scale lifelong learning. That's a totally different game. And so I think society doesn't have the structure for that. At some point, former Prime Minister, when he was head of the digital agenda, I think, Laurent, you were very close to that initiative at the time, if I remember. He came up with the idea of having sort of a portfolio of credits or whatever for you to being trained, pretty much like you said, you have créditant or time credit if you want to take some time off during your career and still get your full credit at the end. That you should have credits for training throughout your lifetime, and that somehow governments should pay for that along with the industry and the employers, etc. That was one way to implement it. But the thing is that who's going to provide the massive scale training? And so universities are not equipped for that. Quite honestly, we want to do that, but we're struggling to grow our own continuous learning activities because we're struggling with the resources that it takes. And then we have initiatives like FARI, like BCode, etc. These are fantastic opportunities, but how do we scale them up to the point where in Belgium we can train not just 600,000 people, but potentially 6 million people or more? And so that's the type of mindset that we need to develop. And with education, that's not at all the way we're connected. We're brain, because we are used to the idea that we train people from the age of 3 to the age of 22, 23, and then they are gone for 40 years of work. And this model does no longer work. That is pretty much for sure. But the institutions need to be reinvented for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can withdraw all the barrier to education, and so the project I represent here, it's open 24/7. It's completely free. There is no age limit, so you can really combine. It's not a time when you need to study. You can study there from 1 year to 5 years. So it's really on the offer is there, I think, to scale, but we are still also with the kind of very centralized thinking about a top-down training, while it will be spread through society and different people will learn on different ways. Some will need gamification, other will need a traditional trainer because it suits.
But that's because society as a whole is structured around the notion of a diploma.
Yes.
I mean, to get access to certain careers, you're focused on diplomas. All of the institutions are structured around that as well. Now, my hope somehow, and I'm not really pleading for my own chapel here, but essentially, my hope is that with AI, the value of a diploma will change dramatically, and not probably for the better. And so, if the value of a diploma goes down, then the job market is going to turn that into the end of the diploma premium. And once the premium to the diploma changes structurally on the job market, then you will have to reverse engineer the entire system and rebuild from there and reshuffle the cards of the education game.
But then you go back to the question of how do you assess not only literacy but also skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Laurent, you want
No,
to
I think there's a paradox here, is that we all agree we need to be trained more and it's important to upskill and so on. But there is less and less money going into education at the moment because of the price increase, because we're going to spend money on defense and other things. And I think, for me, what is clear is that as a society, there is no consensus today on AI. It's not a burning platform where we all want to align for this and we want to develop as a society. I think it's still not a controversial topic, but it's not clear that socially we all want to go for this. And I think that is a bit different from the previous tech revolution, where there was more of a social consensus. And I think today, with the overall context, with the change in the behavior of the big US players, with the risks related to cybersecurity, I think many of us are questioning the purpose of that technology. It's a general purpose, but yeah, we are coming to realize that it's not necessarily only positive. And so I'm not so optimistic about the fact that we're going to invest more in education, because at the moment, I think the social consensus is rather that we're going to invest more either in salaries or pensions or healthcare or defense.
Probably true. But it's a good first. Nicolas, you led an AI literacy at the university, if I'm not wrong. Can you maybe tell us a bit about, because you did some scaling there, I guess. So how did you manage that?
We're actually in the process of the scaling of what we have designed. So at the university, my job is to help the authorities deal with the issues of digitalization and IT in the first place. And then for 2.5 years, we have added AI to the package. And so I'm trying to push the reflection, but this reflection is always everywhere at the university, about how do we deal with AI as a teaching and research institution? How do we deal with this new reality, which hits in several waves? It hits the first time because we see students having access to new tools to take shortcuts on the try of skills we want them to acquire, and not necessarily shortcuts to acquire them, but to demonstrate that they have so-called acquire them, which is not exactly the same thing. And so that's all of the evaluation challenge. We have a second challenge, which is, but we could actually leverage it to ourselves, enrich the way we teach. And so how do we reinvent the way we teach, not just evaluate, thanks to the technology? And then there is the third wave, which is, but by the way, what we teach is maybe not even no longer relevant. And so how do we reinvent what we teach in our programs? And so we need to think in these different time horizons, which are very different. And it all started with the idea that if we wanted this reflection to take place in the first place, given, by the way, that nobody within the university was waiting for the authorities to allow them to use ChatGPT or whatever, especially the students, but also the professors and everybody, that we needed to make sure that we, provide the rules, to make sure that people don't start doing stupid or crazy things with these, but also that we provide at least basic literacy to everyone, not just on prompting and using the technology, which is the easy part, but as you said, on the rules, within the university and at large, within the limits of the technology, understanding a little bit where it comes from, etc., what you can do and not do, and then finally the use cases. And we figured there are two ways to approach the problem. One way to approach the problem is to do a full course that deals with everything, quite deep, and we provide this course to the entire university. That's what most universities, including ULB, has been doing for sustainable development, for instance. We create a big transversal sustainable development course, and we give access to it to all of our 42,000 students. That's one way to go. At the end of the day, you train a few hundreds of people or voluntary people who want to go there. So it will take a lot of time. We figured we need to get the 50,000 people who are members of the community, the students, the staff, the administrative staff, the teachers, etc. We need to train them all at least to some extent. And so we decided to take it from the other side and say we'll start with basic literacy for everyone, and then we'll use a funnel and grow up in skills with those who want to go further. Like you said, Stefan, not everybody is going to be an expert, but we need to provide the basic literacy and then go step by step as far as we can with most people who want. And so the way to do this was to try to combine all of the resources that we had at the university, all of the goodwill that was there among the pedagogy people who were training the professors, among those helping with the methodology issues for the students, those training the personnel in general. Fari also, of course, is helping us. And so we have lots of resources within the university that were doing things in their own corner. What we did was to hire a team of 4 people to basically get everybody together, pool the resources together, see also outside of the university what are the great resources we could tap into in an open source, open license type of format, and then try to create these modules that go from basic literacy to more advanced. And the key question now is the 2 key questions. Now, how do we bring people to the water? I mean, I can bring people to the river, but I cannot force them to drink, quite obviously. That's one thing. But even at the university, it's even harder. Students, I can still find a way to force them to go to the water. But professors in the universities, especially in a free university, as we call ourselves, that's quite a challenge. So it's a matter of incentives and all of the like. But then the second question is, how do we scale this? Now we've created the contents, and what we are doing is trying to start training trainers, so sort of power users who can train around them and use this type of viral contamination to reach the 50,000 people. And we gave ourselves 2 years to get there.
But I hear you hire 4 people, so we come back to investment in education.
Maybe I don't like the fact that we are cutting financially in educational resources, and so I think we don't like it, all of us. But on the other hand, or the other side of the medal, I think what I notice is that there's lots of private players at this moment are popping up with offering qualitative or non-qualitative. Let's keep that open. With trainings, with educational material, and so on. So I think that's a good thing as well. And I think that's a new economic opportunity as well with this technology and this evolution. So I think that's a good thing, but of course it's not a good thing that we cut our finances in education.
I think one of the ways to deal with this is by not looking at learning as only formal learning. I mean, the way we learn, especially as children, is by doing, by experimenting, by having experiences. And I think that's the element that we're underestimating and where we should actually put most of our efforts. And if we see the formats that engage well, and especially with organizations where there are limited resources to put into formal training, it's typically by organizing city walks or team building activities, or things that people are doing anyway. And there is an interest in this topic. They just don't know how to fit it in, to their existing budgets and their existing formats. And we have to be creative, I think, how we can really, really develop experiences for people to participate into that fits into their day-to-day reality, and make sure that, we don't only address it as formal learning.
I think it's we've been talking a lot about the economical perspective and the training of workers or universities or future workers. But there's also the general knowledge of children. A few weeks ago, my 15-year-old daughter came back and she had an assignment, and she told me, the teacher said we could use ChatGPT. And I said, and what else did she tell you? And nothing. I think even those teachers don't know what information they could. I mean, I found it quite good that she told us you can use it because it's learning by using, but there was no context given on how to use it. So what's the need for the common citizens, the children, the students, maybe the the people who are retired to be trained in AI and in the general use case? Can actually users become AI makers? Can we train them to actually build their own AI system? And what should they know? And what resources can they help today? If I want my daughter to learn about AI, apart from the fact that I know a little bit about it, how could she learn it?
I think that's what you mentioned also with the World Economic Forum survey, is that it's not about the technology, it's about analytical thinking, critical thinking, collaboration, and also it gives a huge opportunity not to become a user but a creator. And that's what I think is all about also in the future. If you look at what Unilever just announced a couple of days ago, that they will put 50% of the marketing budget in social, and that they will work 10 times more with influencers. Some of them will be also AI generated. So I think that for the new generation, it's also an opportunity to, and for everyone, this technology, to move from a user to a creator. And you have just, that's why it's so powerful, the famous Nike slogan, just do it, is that you have all the tools to do it. But what I have noticed with more younger people is that they believe that everything it comes out from the machine is true. So that's where, for like every source and every type of information, critical thinking is extremely important. When we saw what DeepSeek had on the stock market effect during a couple of days, weeks, less than Trump, but then people noticed, and some experts came very quickly with the downside of it, and you don't have only one model with ChatGPT as well. So that's why having multiple sources of information, we see also that the credibility of some traditional media is now growing up again, which is good. Yeah, absolutely, which is good. But the skills that we need will be able to be applied in all new technology that we are going to encounter during our lives.
Nicolas.
Yeah, just one thing that comes up to my mind is when we think in terms of the resources to help people and teach them about the technology, etc. I figure it's not about the resources. I think we need to identify clearly what is the enemy. And the enemy in the room, I think, is intellectual laziness. And that is something that you don't really teach. Courage. Curiosity is something that you can still inspire, but courage, how do you really... Because at the end of the day, I believe people are more intelligent than we sometimes think. It's absolutely true that we need to nurture and teach critical thinking and the like. But the most painful part is how do we bring people to actually be willing to go beyond the first answer? And so I think that's really what we're fighting against. And that is the key leverage that the technology providers are actually using to force feed us with using the technology. And that's a very powerful and very dangerous thing. Because the technology is everything it takes to make us completely complacent and lazy. And that, I think, is the worst case scenario, if we end up with machines that dictate everything for us and you completely disengage. We go back to your example of the pilots that disengage from the... and so that I think is a big worry. And I don't know how you teach that. I mean, all of those in the room with grown-up kids know how difficult it is to teach a kid to just beyond kicking the ass. I don't know what you can really do.
Yeah, it's true that we used to go to the library and look into books, and then internet came, and now they just ask ChatGPT for the answer. So, Laurent?
Yeah, maybe an insight on this. So last year, Boston Consulting Group did a study with about 700 of their consultants using ChatGPT and others, and the study was done with Harvard and another school. And what they noticed is that, so it improved the performance of the least performers. And I think that is important also for us as a society, that it's an equalizing tool, which is also the role of education somehow. It's not only to select, it is a bit, but not only. It's also to equalize the skills. So I think it's a technology that has the power to equalize and that should really be put in the hands of those who struggle the most, including students. Now, the other thing that they showed in this study that I find very interesting is that they realized that there was some bias around overconfidence, even with consultants who are all trained in engineering or business schools. But even worse, these biases did not improve after a specific training on critical skills, critical thinking and the like. So I think it's a challenge that is applicable to all of us, is that it's kind of something that needs to be hardwired. Oh, be careful. Am I really sure about this? And it's not something that just happens because we say, yeah, it's important. Even when you train the people, it doesn't happen. So that's why I think we'll have to keep on being very cautious about, the potential for you can call it laziness. I don't like the word because it's very moral judgment. But all these biases, they really biologically they are in our brain, and so we really need, like we have in Europe, a framework where these players cannot leverage the biases to trick us.
Very nice. Can we maybe, because it touched upon this point, can we use AI to teach, to learn? What are the dangers of doing it? What the advantages?
Well, I guess most of us here we've used it to learn, and it's a nice learning tool, right? And it can be an efficient one. But I think again, I think the question is really why do you need to use it? How is it going to help you? And I think it helps us for a lot of low-value tasks, right? You have to write, I don't know, a cover letter or an accompanying email. We all hate this, right? So yeah, it's a technology that allows us.
Nicolas likes.
You like to write cover letters?
Not cover letters, but I like to write, period.
So these are things where, of course, I think for many of us, it's some kind of a liberation. So it's good to use it, and the interactivity of the tool today, compared to a few years ago, makes it a nice learning tool. And I think in universities today, pretty much all students are using it. So I think it's more a matter of defining boundaries, as was said, and it's some kind of hygiene in a way.
Karen?
Yeah, that also loops back to what we were saying earlier. Like it needs to serve a purpose, and we shouldn't just try to throw AI at just anything because it's around. It's an availability. We really have to ask ourselves the question: is this the right answer to this problem? Yes or no? And especially in education, I think we have to be careful not to kind of completely reinvent education using AI just for the sake of using AI. We have to ask ourselves: does it serve a purpose in this context? Because we haven't, as Nicolas pointed out before, we haven't fully embraced the digital transformation in itself. We haven't embraced e-learning at all. And now we're going to throw AI on top of that. I think we have to be careful that we take things step by step as well.
And I think we need to think indeed, like you say, to think very much in terms of what is the configuration in which we deploy these tools, especially in a learning environment. There is always this distinction with these technologies, especially AI, between substituting for the skill or augmenting your own capabilities. The substituting part is what morally, perhaps, I call laziness. It's easy to just ask the machine to do it for you. Your kid might well use, like mine tends to do, at least one of mine tends to do, which is to just turn to the AI to just do the job for him. And I think he doesn't learn much about that. And some recent studies show that if you use AI to just take shortcuts with the learning experience, you might perform better at first hand, but in the longer run, your skill acquisition is lower. And so qualitatively, it's not the same thing. It's a shortcut, but it's qualitatively not the same. These are the things we need to learn about. But there is another configuration which is using AI to actually makes you smarter in a sense, which which is to force you to use your brains in a different way or to use it more. And there was a very fascinating study published last year. Economists looked at the impact of using AI for credit applications in a microcredit institution in Asia. And they asked human workers to do the job of selecting which credit applications to grant or not, and they asked a machine learning algorithm to do the job. And they compared the outcome in terms of the default rate, so the number of or the share of applications that were not, or credits that were not repaid afterwards. And they observed that AI is outperforming the humans by far. The default rate is twice lower with AI than with the human. But then they did different experiences where they tried to complement the two and say what happens is we let the human in charge, like the pilot, but the human receives a hint about what the machine would have done. What is the machine recommendation? And then the human still does what he wants. And then the outcome is, well, basically it's still the same as if the machine was deciding on its own. The human is only degrading a little bit the performance of the machine. It's not adding anything. But they did a fourth experiment, which is the most important and interesting one. They decided to give the humans not just a hint about here is what the machine would have done, but here are the 2-3 core pieces of information in the file that influence the decision of the machine most. So they gave some food for thought for the human worker. And in that case, the human worker outperformed the machine. They did twice as well as the machine alone. And the key difference between the two last use cases is in the first scenario, you use the machine to substitute for your thinking. And then you become complacent. And you don't add anything as a human. In the other case, you use the machine to actually force you to think more, not to think less. And that turns out to provide the best outcome. And from a learning experience as well, but also in every industrial or business use case of the technology, we really need to think hard about those configurations where the machine is not stupidly substituting for us. Maybe in case of very painful cores, I don't know. But at least for the value-adding, value-creative tasks, then we need to be very, very careful to deploy the technology in a way that it augments us rather than substitutes for us.
I fully agree, and they call it the desirable difficulties to aim for. So you want to create a challenge for yourselves, but I think that's a challenge for the user in the first place. Also for the educational staff to use the technology for the desirable difficulties, but also for developers of those tools. I think that's also important to mention because I'm really convinced that AI can be used to improve personalized learning. That's something that we aim for, to reach all levels of students and even professionals. But I really think that we should always aim as a developer, as a teacher, as an individual user for the desirable difficulties to think and to improve the machine thinking and that the machine improves our thinking as well.
Yeah. And so Diana knows it because she's in the room and she was in my class last year, and she knows that from the beginning of ChatGPT, I asked my students in their group work, I forced them to use ChatGPT at least somehow in their work. I wanted them to experiment with the technology, and then I asked them not just to abide to the academic etiquette of telling the sources, etc., but also to reflect in a short video at the end of the exercise about what was their experience and their judgment of the added value of the technology. But this year we did something a bit different. We still ask them to do that, but we also provide them with the output of some other students or even from us, and we ask them to use the technology in the other way now. We ask them to use ChatGPT to criticize the piece that they've produced or that we have produced, and then to start building more, to improving the piece. And that's reversing the way you use technology. It's not technology first, where it creates the first version and you have to check it out, etc. But you really do yourself as a human being the first version, and you use the technology to improve on it. And that's a totally different approach. And actually, it's super interesting. And I'm very curious about the feedback. My sense is that the students will tell me it's even worse in terms of the investment that it requires and the time it requires. Because that was already the lessons learned. I think Diana will agree with that. The main message that I heard from the students from the first and second year of experience was it's actually terrible because it saves you a lot of time at first hand. But then once you have to check all of the references and the validity of the stuff, then you realize you lose twice the time that you saved in the first place. But that's interesting as experience.
But it's maybe more complete.
Potentially full of biases nonetheless if you let the machine give you the first shot.
Indeed. We've been talking a lot about AI literacy around the use of it and the technology. We haven't talked so much about ethics or actually how much energy does it require to do a ChatGPT call. Can we maybe touch upon that? I don't know if somebody wants to.
Karen va faire ça.
Yeah, it's indeed one of the basic awarenesses that we're trying to get across. Again, it goes to, does it serve a purpose? Does it serve a purpose to use much more energy to do this type of prompting on a GPT model rather than any type of web search? Huh? On average, right now, I think we're around 25 times as much energy consumed for a ChatGPT search versus a prompt versus a web search. Does this make sense? You know, if you're doing this to do a very complex task, which in other cases would have required either like 100 web searches or not have been possible at all, it might be worth it. If it's to just ask if I would be prettier with blonde hair or black hair or whatever hair, I don't think it serves a purpose. But it's, first of all, people have to be aware of the fact that this is massively energy consuming. And we are arriving at an age where big tech companies are buying nuclear reactors, which have been put out of order to make sure, you know, that they can sustain their energy consumption if things go south and if our requirements continue to go up. Is that a desirable situation, that we have tech companies running nuclear reactors? I personally don't think so. So we do have to ask ourselves these questions again and again, like, does this serve a purpose? Does this meet our European values as humans? Is this something that we want in the first place? And within that context, we can explore, you know, what is meaningful and what is not, but let's first put the boundaries and then play around.
And about bias and fairness and equity, that is not the only environment. You said probably it's more complete, but maybe it's completely biased. How can we teach users to be careful about the bias and maybe, or maybe to prompt or to do something that the bias is less?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that different than. I mean, when you're in a university, what you need to teach your students is to apply their own judgment to whatever they read. Even a piece of scientific knowledge is not to be taken for granted. You should always challenge what you read, and so it's no different with AI. Like I said, the only enemy really is your complacency towards what is being provided, because it's very comfortable. But honestly, it was the same already. It's very easy to find a report somewhere from the industry or to find some scientific paper that is well cited and say, oh, X and Y and Z published here has said so, so I can take it for granted. Yeah, I mean, it's about applying the intellectual etiquette that you're trying to teach your students, and so that's by forcing them to challenge what they've produced themselves, that you bring people of all ages, by the way, to think twice about what they read, and sometimes to show them. But you see, you've reproduced this part of the text. Was it really coming from you? No, it came from ChatGPT. Okay, fine. Did you really cross-check? And then you realize, okay, no, actually it was not reliable. Blah blah blah. So, but I think it's easier to do all of that if people understand a little bit how the machine works, and that is also something that we try not to neglect, and that's probably the most difficult part if you're talking about massive training or literacy in AI. You don't want, and maybe contrarily to the car, well, I personally believe that it's easier to drive a car when you understand a little bit how the engine works. But nonetheless, it's true that you can completely ignore that and still drive the car. But I think with AI, it's more dangerous because it's more invisible what is happening in the background. And I think it's really important for people using AI to understand a little bit how it works. And I don't think it takes so much technological knowledge to understand the idea of a neural network and a deep neural network, and understand a little bit what's the role of probabilities in that, and the training phase and the inference phase, and what's really happening. Once you have that in mind with a general idea, to me, I think it's quite obvious that you will more easily understand why the machine responds in this way, or what are the limits to what you can ask, etc. And so the combination of understanding a little bit the inner working and practicing a lot makes you finally make up your own mind about what is reliable and what is not. But you need to provide everything, not just prompting. I mean, if you just teach how to prompt, you will bring people to the wall.
I think that's indeed essential, and especially to understand the concept like bias, which is very abstract in itself, right? But as soon as people understand that in the end, AI is about pattern recognition and statistics, because it comes across, especially for people that use ChatGPT and the likes, it comes across as language, as something very human, as something that has an understanding, which is absolutely not the case. But if you really get, drill down to the fact that it's about pattern recognition and you give them some tangible examples about, how bias can occur, we often explain, for example, when Corona first hit and we all started doing video meetings and such, then there was this big fuss around the fact that Google Meet was by accident blending out the faces of less white people, because apparently in the database used to train the system, there were not enough less white people around. And so this is not a conscious bias, right? It's not a company, and not pointing fingers, because any tech company has come across things like this. And I'm pretty sure the developers at Google didn't say, like, how can we design a database in which we fade out the black people? But it happens by accident, right? But it's by seeing how hurtful it can be on the outcome that people start reflecting about, okay, where could the potential bias be in the data sets that we provide to the system, to recognize patterns based on which it will make conclusions and recommendations and assumptions. So, and that's the mindset, indeed, the critical thinking mindset that we have to put in place. Like, in whatever way could we misinterpret the patterns that come out of the system and the patterns we have provided through the data sets? And it's by making it tangible that people will start understanding. Same example, like when the first universities started using these types of systems to select all the resumes that were coming in, it typically sets them off against a historical data sets. But if your organization only started employing women in the 70s, your historical data set will be predominantly male, obviously. So the outcome will be predominantly male, not because we don't want females to work at our universities, but because there tends to be a historical data bias that people are unaware of. But you have to really exemplify this by giving as many examples as you can think of, very differently, to grow this understanding of what this very abstract concept of bias is about.
And that's why I believe in partnerships, in ecosystemic approach, and together with FARI, we are not expert in the domain of FARI, but we train very well, I would say, software developers, and so we partner with them, and during 1 week, we did an ethical exercise based on gamification with our student. Of course, it only impacts a few number of people, but so I do think also that combining the different expertise and not trying to do everything by yourselves in training is probably a good way also to increase your impact and also to give these ethical tools and thinking to the people you are training.
Because time is running out slowly, and I would like to leave some time for questions from the public. But I'd like that we touch upon the responsibility of this literacy in AI. Is it the educational system? Is it the government? Is it the companies? Is it all of that? Is it the parents? Because we talked a lot about critical thinking, and I believe that's my role as a parent also.
It's pretty much everybody. We need everybody on board: parents, educators, governments, companies, everyone.
It's a shared responsibility, definitely.
Yeah. But you always need to look at what could be the interest behind the person providing this training or this solution. Don't say it's good or bad, but it's just that you need to know that if you have to use only one tool from one vendor, of course the goal is to increase their adoption rates, and he's telling you, and then when the tool is changing or you want to use another tool, then you need to be retrained again. So that's one element I think to take into account as well, but it's a shared responsibility, of course.
Maybe to finish, could cracking the lifelong learning paradox or dilemma or problem, could it be what gives Europe an competitive advantage in the economical world?
Well, at the end of the day, the performance of an economy has to deal with access to key resources, to energy, and to talents. And so talents, you can either import them, as the US are doing massively, but or you create them. And that's your education system. The US have both. In Europe, we have great educational institutions of all kinds. We're not super good at attracting and keeping our talents. But it can never do. I mean, that's why this discussion about the lack of investment in education is enraging me all the time. This is, as a policymaker, this is the only bet that is sure. I mean, how many investments can you be sure of that it will pay off in 30 years? Besides education, there is none. And so missing this one is something that is beyond my understanding, except that it's very long term, because the impact is only very long term. So from a policy point of view, I understand that the window of opportunity is not the right one.
Maybe last thing, is that I think we really need to facilitate more from governmental side, academic side, maybe as well, facilitate more lifelong learning culture within companies, within organizations, within governments as well. Because I really think, and numbers show it in researches as well, that in Belgium we are not the best in class, not at all actually, when it comes to lifelong learning. So lifelong learning culture, how do we sell lifelong learning? Because I think many corporate companies already talk about lifelong learning, and LMD, learning and development, is the new recruiting. But I really think that makes sense. And I think that also SMEs, big or small SMEs, should invest more in that, and it doesn't have to be with big financial costs. I think that you can aim and you can invest in that, in lifelong learning and development, step by step, with non-formal learning, creating a learning culture within your companies, creating more learning leadership actually within your companies, within governments as well, and governments should be facilitating and engaging in that as well, I think. That's something I always notice in discussions like this, that the lifelong learning culture, we always talk about, we should learn about AI and follow a workshop and a training. Of course, that's important, and we believe that, but how do you facilitate that within your company? How do you facilitate a culture? Because that's not done in 1 or 2 days, of course.
I find it a good way to stop here for questions. Do we have questions in the audience? We have many questions.
Yes. Okay, it works. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I'm in fact a policymaker, but I also partially am a teacher in a secondary school. So interesting maybe to tell is that we have last year a lot of training sessions to see how we can integrate this beast into to the classroom, in fact. And interesting to see also is that we will see in the coming years the difference between lazy teachers that use the stuff just to prepare their courses, for example, and then go to class and do some kind of a lazy course, and the others that are forced to learn more. In fact, what we have been learned during these courses is that you don't have to know less, but you have to know more than the machine is delivering to you. For example, you can do some first kind of brainstorm session with ChatGPT to deliver a preparation that is interesting, but then you have to be very critical to see how can I make it more creative, how can I do something with my class that is more interesting. And this is especially also in something that we are doing in our school at this moment for pilot projects. So all kind of teachers are doing all kind of stuff with programming and using the AI at this moment. And for example, in Python programming, you see that you can ask very quickly a small program, for example, create a game or something like that. But then you see immediately afterwards that the pupils are lacking the structure behind, are lacking the concepts. And this is something that can be replaced without the teacher. So as far as the experience is at this time, is that AI is a tool, an instrument added to what teachers can deliver, but it can't replace them at this moment.
Maybe another question to you, or something I had when I went to school is is that something new? Because there are still teachers, and in my time there were teachers every Friday afternoon they put on, and then those times there was a DVD that I don't think that doesn't exist anymore. It was a DVD with a video movie about the topic we were discussing. Okay, yeah, now you will have, now there are teachers who will use ChatGPT or another tool just to be lazy in the negative way, because being lazy can be positive as well. as well. So I don't think that's something new, but that's something that we always should be aware of in education, in schools, and so on. So I don't think that's something new, actually.
So how you sense, in fact, the new revolution, if it is just to replace something to be more efficient or something like that, I think that is not the way to go. But if you are experimenting now, doing all kinds of pilot projects, what can be added in the teaching by help of this new instrument, it could be very interesting, and it is learning from two sides, from the teachers, but also from the pupils.
Definitely. Yeah.
But it has to be good framed in all the exercises that we are doing, because otherwise it's just fun. Or you can use ChatGPT and see what comes out, and that's okay. That's not the way that we have to go.
Maybe one element to complement. I'm also teaching a class in master at university, and I think actually the way we're going to use AI will be very different depending on the age of the students. Yeah. To be very concrete, we give a weekly assignment in the class. Now, the ChatGPT answer is the very bare minimum. I mean, if it's not as good as ChatGPT, I mean, you don't get half of the marks for sure. So I think, and same for final thesis. I think today pretty much all final theses go through AI, and it's actually a tool to improve the grading and make it fairer, more efficient, still with biases. So graders need to be very aware of that. But I think it's somehow raising the bar in higher education, which is, I mean, it's good. I mean, we will be better learners and better graders as well. I think earlier, that's where it's going to be very tricky, right? Because this is the early acquisition of skills. So this is where, for me, it's still, you see, we're still experimenting on, with little kids. I find it a fantastic tool to use with little kids, but it needs to be very much supervised, right? Of course, it's much less supervised with 22, 23-year-olds. So how are we going to supervise kids on this in the future?
Yeah.
Maybe to add on that is that I think the main trick of really embracing lifelong learning, and especially in an education context, is that we have to let go of the basic notion that there is such a thing as an expert in front of the classroom and a non-expert in the classroom, whether it's kids or others. I think we have to arrive at the point where we agree that we're learning together, that the educators are learning as much as the people in the classroom are, and that we explore and learn together how to do this. And that's probably the way to go, as far as I'm concerned.
My take, if I may add, especially, I like your question about what you're questioning is, do we still need teachers in the future, right? Yeah. And my take on that is we tried with MOOCs already, and we promised MOOCs would be the end of the university as we knew it, etc. Yeah, long live the MOOCs. Honestly, I think it's the same with AI. It's a very powerful tool, and like with every tool, you have the best of it and the worst of it at the same time in the package. But the difference between the upside and the downside will be human. It will be us as teachers. My hope with AI, but it's a very idealistic thing. I agree on that. But I think it should inspire all teaching institutions to come back to a more Socratic way of teaching. My hope is that the bulk of the explanation and then the theory explanation, whatever, could be provided by AI, by online tools, by online learning, whatever. But the real questioning, the interaction with what you're teaching, the questioning, all of the processing of the theory rather than just the theory itself, this is very Socratic at the end of the day, and this should be done on a much lower scale, with much more intense interactions in a much more equal terms. I agree with that. What AI and MOOCs and online and digital could kill is the old format of the ex cathedra teaching. Be my guest. I think that's a very good idea to kill that. But provided that we replace it with something that is superior. and that is going back to human interactions, because honestly, I think that's really the way to learn in a long-term way is through human interactions far more than anything else. That's at least my perception.
Therefore, I was happy in the introduction, I think it was of Stephan, that you also focus on what they call soft skills. I don't like the term, but soft skills, human interaction skills. I really believe that's always also very, very important in the discussion of artificial intelligence technology.
I think, sorry, but
After we'll take another question.
Absolutely. I think this Socratic learning is very much appreciated as far as I know also from the students. But they are very good, of course, in misleading their teachers also, so I could have
There was another question.
It's the first time I'm using this. Thank you very much for your excellent insights. I'd like to ask you something. Since there is a dramatic change in the attitude of the US towards Europe, shouldn't we try to encourage the use of Mistral, our European AI? It's the reflection I had, but I hear nobody speaking about it.
Well, I may start, and then the other ones will certainly add more valuable stuff. My first hint at that is, let's not be fooled into believing that Mistral is a European solution entirely. Look at the shareholders. I think more than 50% of Mistral is in the hands of venture capitalists from the Silicon Valley. And it's very hard for Mistral not to run on Azure, which is Microsoft's infrastructure anyways. So yes, I'm all in favor of European sovereign solutions, and I think the answer is not that we need to push one particular actor. I think the answer is the same as with the press. What you need is a plurality of press players. What you don't want is a press that is in the hands of only one or two people. And it's the same with AI. These tools are going to shape the way we think, are going to shape what we see and what we read. And this is so fundamentally important that what we need is biodiversity in the ecosystem. That's what we really need. So we need to nurture Mistral for sure, no question. But we need to nurture a lot more players like this in Europe, all over the place. And since the monolithic bazooka approach of OpenAI and the likes is to go after giant models that do it all, that cost 300 or 500 million euros to train in the first place, that leaves very, very little room for a plurality of players. And so that's why we just need not to push one particular actor, but many actors, and encourage them to build smaller models that can be trained on a cheaper scale, so that we can have many of them. If you go after the giant LLMs, my fear is that there will be room on the market for only 2 or 3 big players. In any case, European or not, you don't want that.
Definitely something we should train people also to know the different options.
Yeah.
When you use a Chinese tool, you know that your data will go to the Communist Party. When you use an American one, you know it goes to a private company, public listed. When you know it's in Europe and that there is your regulation, you know that your data are your own data. So it's also about making sure that this plurality of users, that at least in Europe you have a good legal framework for the accuracy of the information, for the treatment of the data.
Thank you. Do we have questions online?
I just have one question. Just to jump on the first question regarding the education. For myself, I went back to school and I had to provide a thesis on AI. It was in 2022. And I think it's Laurent who talked about the fact that it's more demanding to his student about the material they provide. And I'm a little bit concerned about that, because we heard during the session that we have to be more concerned about the limits of AI as well. And when you ask your student to provide more material, more deeper inside, where is the limit? Because the aim is that a machine have more information than the human being, right? Because they have all kind of library with different kind of information that we don't have. So how can be a student more efficient than a human. So it's a little bit dangerous, in my opinion, if you ask a student to be more efficient than a machine who have a lot of information.
Well, I think that that's precisely the purpose of education, right? Is to train humans to make use of all the information that they have at their disposal. And today, these models are there. And so what can we do on that? Force them to use at least 2 or 3 different models instead of just one. Or, look, it's very easy as a teacher, I find, to spot the ones who have been lazy using AI. You find a few things. But that's precisely what our responsibility is, to prevent this. So to show students, okay, you're not going to fool me on this one. And I expect more than you just believing what is there. You see, so that's why, indeed, we're going to be expecting more than what the machine is able to do today.
What I may perhaps add to that, I fully agree with what Laurent said, is if you reduce the tasks to a data crunching game, you have the knowledge and the machine crunches it, and that's the end of it, then I think it's over. But I don't think that the tasks that are of high value can be reduced down to just crunching data. And that's where you need to understand the difference between the way our brains work, with very limited power, by the way, and the way LLMs work. LLMs really need millions, billions, trillions of data points to just make any sense of anything. You need millions of hours of driving in the circulation for the Google car to start driving more or less properly, whereas it takes only 16 or 18 hours of driving lessons for a person to actually drive. And what's the difference between the two? The difference is that we, as human beings, are very bad at processing very large amounts of information. Let's leave that to the machine. But we are very good at generalizing from low-frequency cases, which is something that the machine is very, very bad at doing. And so you need to use the complementarities, to play with the complementarities. There are things where we're far more performant than the machine, especially when it requires low-frequency generalization, but when it also requires judgment, values, empathy, these type of things that the machine can only simulate but cannot really perceive. And if you combine these things with the brute force of the machine, then we should indeed end up with a final product that is superior to what the machine on its own could do.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we can drive in 16 hours. We make a lot of car accident injuries and people dying, while from the machine we don't allow it.
Yeah, but that's a question for Laurent. It's a matter of being a Kantien or a utilitarian. I agree. Long debate.
Okay, yes. So we have 4 minutes left. I'm going to try in a few sentences to summarize all the great insight we had today, but I'm going to start for the call in investment in education, because I think it's the most important. Lifelong learning is going to ask for investment, and it's important not only for AI literacy, but for all the technology who are going to hit us. I heard also from you that there's a lot of more or less free material to learn around AI, but that the question is, how do we bring the people to the water and make them drink? I stole the expression from Nicolas. I also remember that it's a shared responsibility of the society to get to this AI literacy, so all of you get to it today. And I think the last point, and I think it's a vision I share, that maybe with the car it's not necessary to understand how the car works to drive it, but we as a panel all believe that understanding the basics of the AI technology is very important to use it in a responsible and trustworthy way. If I forgot anything, you have 2 seconds to fill up. Thank you very much to everybody to attend, and thank you to my great panel to have given us all those nice insights.
Thank you.